think there are some clear winners and losers in the commercial space coming out of the pandemic. A clear winner is going to be the industrial space, and I think that's going to be in three parts. I believe we've seen an acceleration in e-commerce, which was sort of a necessary evil this time
Yes.
around. Didn't have much choice, but that has shown some weak spots in the national warehousing and distribution model, where Amazon is trying to ultimately get to almost instantaneous delivery for all of its customers. So I think you'll see an uptick in warehousing and distribution. Similarly, I think you're going to see more server farms as people do more distributed computing, more work online, and so you'll see more computer centers being built. I also think you'll see some flex manufacturing capabilities become sort of a government mandate. We've discovered that in times like this, it's really been difficult to reorient manufacturing to create things like ventilators and masks. And we also are made painfully aware of our vulnerability in having pharmaceutical manufacturing being done predominantly offshore. Almost all of our generic pharmaceutical or antibiotics are being made offshore. So I think industrial is a clear winner. I think in the short term, the hotel space is going to be devastated. Most hotels are running at about 10% occupancy rates right now. And I think a lot of the smaller owners will probably be hard pressed to survive until the market turns back. I think retail is going to be in for a challenge. It already was struggling a little bit, but with a number of retailers who were sort of teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, now going months without any revenue, I'm not sure how many of those survive to the end of the pandemic, which will put more pressure on retail space. So those are kind of the obvious ones. The two that are interesting to me, most interesting really, are multifamily and office. On the multifamily side, I think there's going to be some short-term disruption because I believe personally that renters are being more impacted in the early stages of this economic downturn than homeowners are.
Hmm.
If you look at the industries most affected, travel, tourism, hospitality, retail, restaurants, the majority of jobs are relatively low paying hourly jobs. Those workers tend to be much more likely to rent than to own. And so I think short term, while there are moratoria in place on evictions by landlords, and where millions of Americans are unemployed and maybe unable to pay their rent, you may have some financial pain in the short term. On the other hand, I think a lot of people that might have been getting ready to become homeowners for the first time may have to rethink that and get their finances back in order, especially in a credit tightened market, which you talked about earlier.
Yes.
So there will be more demand for rental properties after we get through this short term churn. And then finally, there's office, and office is probably the most fascinating of the industrial or the commercial segments. I think a lot of companies are going to look up and say, you know what, this wasn't such a bad thing having everybody work from home.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't be paying a massive amount of our income into infrastructure and overhead. Maybe we can get by with fewer people working in a central office, and we could even have more of a distributed office arrangement rather than having one massive complex in an expensive geography. Maybe having smaller offices located in less expensive markets around the country. Um, even the infrastructure inside offices may change as
Hmm.
we found how difficult it is to do any sort of social distancing in most office environments. So I think long term, the office sector might undergo some of the most significant and profound changes of any of these sectors.